I'm George Galloway.
I am Steve Topple.
And together we are Topple Galloway. It's the Christmas edition. That's why we're dressed fancy and all that.
Yes,
it's
revolution.
the 24th edition, to my amazement. And I hope you've been... Okay. Shall I start again? Start the whole thing again. Okay. I'm George Galloway.
I'm Steve Topple.
And together we're Topple Galloway. Welcome to the Christmas edition, our 25th edition of Topple Galloway.
That's quite something,
amazement.
actually.
Time flies when you're enjoying yourself. Let's hope the audience is enjoying it too. I'm wearing a black shirt though. I'm in mourning for Mourinho. Well, not quite, because he's made off with £22.5 million in compensation, which, if you're going to be sacked at Christmas time, isn't a bad...
no, it's not.
Compensator isn't a bad solace. So there's no need to weep for Jose Mourinho, though he'll always be a special one for me. It just didn't work out as well at Manchester
Please,
United.
sorry, I have to interrupt.
Who's Mourinho?
I know the name, obviously. I wouldn't have told you he's the manager of Manchester United if you'd have asked me. So, what's got for a novice? What's gone on here, and why?
Okay,
why is he
Jose
gone?
Mourinho, the special one, has won titles and European championships all over Europe, starting off in Portugal, but also in Spain and in Italy, and here with Chelsea, 2 terms with Chelsea, and he did fantastically well there. He came to Manchester United 2.5 years ago. He spent £400 million. The club is languishing in 6th place, a long way behind the others in the top 4. You've got to finish in the top 4 to get into the European Champions League, which is where the big bucks are. So Manchester United's billionaire American owners who know nothing about football and never come, the Glazers, they own some sports outfit in the United States. They've got nothing to do with Manchester, nothing to do with United, know nothing about football, and last year took out £18 million in dividends, sold I think £13 million worth of their shares. They're doing really well. United's doing really badly. Basically a squad of misfits has been assembled by Mourinho and his predecessors at the cost of many hundreds of millions of pounds, and they're completely misfiring. They seem to hate the manager, so their performance level has dipped. I would argue they've been deliberately sabotaging the interests of the fans in order to get rid of the manager, which is a very, very ugly look. My solution is to put Carrick, the assistant coach, former captain of the team, and who's sitting there on the bench next to Mourinho, put him in charge. He's got United at heart, he knows the game, he knows the players, and crucially, I'd clear out these expensive misfits. One of them, Sanchez, is being paid £500,000 per week, and he's almost never in the starting 11. That's how much of a flop he's been. Others like Lukaku and Pogba cost almost £200 million for the two of them. They'll be on top drawer wages, but they're not performing at all.
So is this essentially then, my take on this then, is this essentially a sort of hyper-capitalist situation where essentially you've got the owners wanting more and more profit, more and more money, and because, I mean, sixth place, that's terrible. I suppose it's terrible in terms of Manchester United.
It is.
Isn't it?
If you've known, the great days, if you've known George Best and Dennis Law and Bobby Charlton, or if you've known the record-breaking run of Sir Alex Ferguson as manager, when United won everything that was in front of them almost all the time, it's quite a come down. And the humiliation of a 3-1 defeat, which could easily have been 6-1, from Liverpool, their great rivals, on Saturday was the final straw. It's not so much that they're not making money. You could scarcely make more money than United, which is a gigantic money-making machine, a worldwide brand. It's fear that if they don't qualify for the Champions League, which currently looks way out of sight, then that'll be the beginning of a slide.
Right.
Because nobody's too good to go down the table, and then you begin to worry about losing money. But my key point is Manchester United's youth team, virtually none of whom have managed to break through into the first team, are the best youth team in the country. They beat Chelsea 4-1 the night before Mourinho was sacked. Virtually nobody knows the name of them because they never break through into the team. So my solution, put Carrick in charge and promote the youth. Get rid in January of some at least of these expensive misfits. So Jose Mourinho is gone, but Theresa May, she's still there.
Yes, quite. Where to begin with this? Yeah, I mean, yes, it's been a fascinating year watching the Brexit debacle play out, if you like, and it's going to go to the wire. I mean, we probably could record a show on Christmas Day because there have been more developments since then.
Christmas might be cancelled.
Well, they're talking about that, aren't they? Because the Speaker, John Bercow, would have the right to pull Parliament back if necessary. But, I mean, at the time of recording, so we had this no confidence in the Prime Minister motion from Jeremy Corbyn, which is absolutely fantastic. I love this.
It was a brilliant piece of ring-craft.
It was.
It wrong-footed everyone. Did you see her running out of the chamber?
Yeah, it's just brilliant.
Instantly, within seconds.
It was delicious. It spooked the mainstream press because Labour had been saying up to the wire that no, we're not going to do this. It spooked half of his own party because reportedly even McDonnell didn't know, although I'm not sure he didn't know.
I don't think he knew, and his tweet welcoming it was, if not churlish, then less than enthusiastic.
Yeah. And then he just dropped this on Parliament. It was
at
brilliant.
5 to 6.
Yeah.
Just when all the news bulletins were ready to roll at 6 o'clock.
For anyone who says that the team around him hasn't pulled it back, because I was sceptical of them at first, and they weren't performing very well for the sort of first period of his tenure as leader. But I think in the past few months, they seem to have pulled it together, and he's being now quite well advised, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And also he knows Parliament very well. I mean, I suggested last night a device to his people, which is a motion, if she won't allow, because it seems she's not allowing a motion of no confidence in herself.
Yeah.
That's British democracy. There's a motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister, but the Prime Minister has the power to refuse to hear it and allow it to be taken. But there is a device that cannot be gainsaid, and I suggested it to Corbyn's people last night, which is to move a reduction in her salary of £5 or £10, which is tantamount to no confidence. Greatly embarrassing if it passes. And there's a chance that it could pass. But they'd already thought of it. Corbyn's been in Parliament for 35 years and it shows.
Yeah, I think so.
He knows the rules. He knows his way around the ropes in the ring, and I thought it was a brilliant piece of ringcraft last night.
It was, absolutely. I mean, so to take it into context of what could happen moving forward, I mean, essentially, as you say, the government has said, no, we're not going to debate this motion in Theresa May, which they are allowed to do, because looking at the makeup of this session of Parliament, which runs to 2019, Labour have already used up their 17 allocated opposition day debates for this whole session. So any more opposition day debates they want are either at the discretion of the whips or the discretion of the government to say they can have them. Now, forward from that, the SNP, I think Caroline Lucas and the Lib Dems have made an amendment to this no confidence in the Prime Minister, making it
much less likely to be carried. Yeah. They're playing games, Steve. The reason Corbyn didn't table a motion of no confidence in the whole government is how could any Tory either vote for it or even abstain if it automatically triggered a 21-day period in which a general election might be the most likely outcome. You're never going to win a majority like that as long as the DUP are committed to keeping this government in power, which they are. So cutely, he made the motion on her personally, hoping that some of the 117 Tories who told the world just a few days ago that they had no confidence in her as their leader, hoping that some of them would find the contradiction just too bizarre for them to pop up and say, well, we don't want her as our leader, but we do want her running the country. So it was a very clever move and might not have succeeded, but would certainly expose that 117. I mean, how does Jacob Rees-Mogg, the member for the 19th century, look now? He was standing in the mall just a few days ago, shouting up at the Queen's bedroom, asking her to force Theresa May to resign. The same man, a few days later, has had to declare he'll be voting confidence in Theresa May.
Yeah, because the whole ERG group came out and said that no, of course we wouldn't vote for that. But as you say, it makes them look ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, it's a preposterous situation that the SNP and the like are forcing. I mean, so we're left with now. I mean, because his no confidence motion in May, in my opinion, was just another kind of sucker punch, building up to what is now the 14th of January, where the debate on the withdrawal agreement will happen. Now, obviously,
well, it has to happen by the 21st. Probably be a few days before that.
I mean, under the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, he can call a no confidence motion and it has to be debated. So there's no issue there with him getting that passed. And he can come back and give no confidence motions as many times as he wants.
Mrs. Thatcher moved five, by the way. Before she got in 79.
Squawkbox did an excellent short sort of piece on that, and it was very good and very interesting. So we're back to this position again, as we've discussed before, about timing for him to do this, essentially, aren't we? Because as you say, if these rats in the sack like the ERG and the like within the Tory party won't hold true to their word and vote no confidence in her, then it's highly unlikely they're going to move against the actual government. So, I mean, the DUP were in talks with Labour last week. Weren't they? And then they've come out on Tuesday morning when we're recording this saying, well, if she gets the concessions around the backstop, then we might vote with her, but we'll have to see what comes back at that. So, I mean, we're still no further forward, really, than when we last spoke.
Not really. Although she keeps saying she will not hold a second referendum, I'm not sure that we can believe her. In any case, she might be forced by events to hold a second one. I'm against the second referendum, but if there is going to be one, there can only be, I think, two choices on the ballot paper for lots of practical and also democratic reasons. And the two questions are, do you want to leave with Theresa May's Brexit deal, or do you want to just leave on international terms, world trade terms, WTO terms? She might win that referendum, but maybe not. But that's the only two legitimate questions. To put remaining in the EU on the ballot paper is to basically subvert the gigantic British referendum of 2016, in which leaving the EU won. And you can't have such exercises and not implement the result. Otherwise, you're inviting people to, well, virtually take up arms. You're saying that democracy means nothing in the country.
No, exactly.
Even when it's exercised at the ballot box, it means nothing. So I hope that she'll resist that. I think that she will. But the dogs are out. Have you noticed?
Well, yes, with the one of, in my opinion, our funniest episodes.
Yeah, it was a good episode.
Yeah. Who let the dogs out? Yes, because of course the dogs, as in the Bitterites and the moderates within the Labour Party, and those who oppose Corbyn,
FBPE.
Yes, those.
I blocked them on sight. Do you? It took me years to know what FBP meant, but I knew there were bad ones, so I just blocked them.
They don't darken my door, oddly enough. I'm not quite sure why, but they are out in force. And of course, them pushing for Corbyn to call this no confidence motion early is part of their strategy.
It's pure opportunism.
Yeah, as we discussed last week, it's them knowing that it will fail, and therefore they'll be able to scream blue murder about how Corbyn can't even oppose the government properly now when he's got an open poll, etc.
They think that if Labour's no confidence motion fails, Labour will have to move to demanding a second referendum. I never use the phrase people's vote because, of course, it presupposes that the people that voted last time were not people.
Well, no, it's very true. And of course, I mean, it implies the fact that we really have a say in this whole sham affair anyway, doesn't it? But they are... I don't know what it's going to take, because we've discussed this before, and over the course of 2018, we've seen this consistent undermining of Corbyn again. For like, we're now in year 3 of Corbyn's tenure, and it's just been consistent, and they're like dogs with a bone, really, aren't they? And exactly, and it's constant, and it's like, when are you going to stop this? What will it take
barking,
for
will you?
People to leave him alone?
But he won't clean out the kennel. This is something that we can't overlook forever.
No.
Because, for example, if there was a snap election now, all these people would be the Labour candidate in their constituency.
Yep.
I mean, if you were a Corbyn supporter in Streatham, you'd have to vote for Choco O'Muna. Yeah. If you were a Corbyn supporter in Ian Austin's constituency, you'd need to vote for him. Yeah. You probably wouldn't, because he only got in by 23 votes last time.
No, exactly.
But, I mean, right across the country, all these backstabbers, coup plotters, who've done everything they could to stop a Labour government coming to power, would again be standing for election wearing the Labour rosette.
Yeah, and of course
Corbyn actually hasn't done anything about that.
No, because the shambolic attempt to put mandatory reselection up on the slate at the conference it fell apart essentially, and we were left with this
it wasn't properly fought for, though.
No, not at all. I don't think it was, and I think it should have been the priority, because essentially the whole Corbyn movement and the Corbyn agenda is in part null and void while these people are still in. Because
imagine if Labour got in with a small majority.
Yeah,
they'd burst his tyres so he couldn't go to the palace to get the job.
Yeah, and it should have been his priority and his team's priority to push mandatory reselection through. And what we ended up with was, of course, this kind of watered down nonsense where the Labour machinery still picks the candidates and constituency parties have the final say, but they'll be left with a bunch of rotten eggs.
And only if you've got time.
Yeah.
If it happened quickly,
everything's
happening quickly, there's no choice at all. There's no time to have a trigger ballot and replace people.
No, so he's stitched up like a UKIPper, effectively. Yeah. And I can't see this being resolved anytime soon. He's given himself no mechanism and no manoeuvrability to solve this problem, and they won't relent, George. They are never going to relent.
No, never. Their loyalty is to Blair and his method of doing things. He's never off the television.
It's ridiculous.
He seems to be completely unself-conscious about what people in the country think about him. Yeah. He has minus 50 ratings.
Is that what it
yes,
is
minus
now?
the lowest in Britain.
Is that as low as Macron?
It's much lower even than Macron, and twice as low as May. She's minus 22. He's minus 50. So people actually hate seeing him, and yet he can't stay away. It's the smell of the crowd, the roar of the grease paint.
I think there's something sort of sociopathically a bit wrong with him. I think.
Yeah.
It's
looking more and more like the portrait of Dorian Gray.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. This year has seen him repeatedly come back despite all odds.
And the journalists never ask him a single question. For example, when he popped up the other day, it was the day after the US Senate had found MBS, the Saudi crown prince, guilty of the murder of an American newspaper columnist, Jamal Khashoggi. And nobody asked Blair, you work for this guy for 9 million a year. Have you got anything to say about the fact the US Senate has just called him a murderer? Not one journalist asked him that.
And this is part of the problem. He's given essentially a free rein, like the Alistair Campbells of this world are. I mean, in any other planet, Tony Blair and Alistair Campbell would be locked up.
They'd be under arrest, tagged, awaiting trial in The Hague.
But in our world, they're still given a platform, like their opinions are even valid.
Platform
after the chaos.
And deference. Reverence, even,
reverence is
in
the word,
case of Blair. It's extraordinary.
I think so. But I just want to segue onto something else. Actually,
go on.
You've brought brought up Saudi Arabia. I discussed this, I recorded this yesterday, with the wonderful US comedian Lee Camp. Great guy, he hosts Redacted
Wonderful.
Tonight.
Yeah, I've been on his show, yeah.
Oh, have
Yeah.
Lee, if you're watching this, where's that offer that you keep promising me? Great segment with him last night. And we discussed at length the Middle East because I think it's important that we touch on this because you talk about the Khashoggi murder. I mean, this year has been not necessarily one of the most staggering years for situations in the Middle East that I've witnessed in my short time involved in politics. I think 2014 was that Operation Protective Edge. That was quite something else. But it's been a chaotic year in the Middle East. I mean, you have the situation in Syria. We had the whole Duma nerve agent attack that never was a nerve agent, of course. You have the situation in Yemen, which the US seems to be making a small amount of manoeuvring now away from Saudi Arabia. Yeah, away from Saudi Arabia, where the UK has staunchly and dogmatically maintained its support for Saudi Arabia. And then you have, of course, the ongoing situation with Gaza, Israel, Palestine, and you have interesting moves from Qatar withdrawing from OPEC, which has put the cat amongst the pigeons completely. But do you think, looking at this year as a sum of all parts and thinking ahead for next year, what do you think we're going to see any foreign policy movement from the government we currently have regarding the Middle East?
Because not from this government. Apart from anything else, they have no time or intellectual space to even think about other things. They are completely infatuated with the Brexit issue. As well they might be, because it is the biggest British issue since the Second World War. And it's, you know, only weeks away. It's 100 days away, 99 actually, 99 at the point of this recording. And nobody knows who's going to lead us or on what basis. So I doubt they're doing much foreign policy thinking. Maybe I'll challenge your point. I think 2018 has been a year of grim attrition. Let's start with Yemen, where maybe 500,000 people have died from cholera, from starvation, from bombardment, from various illnesses associated with starvation. And in Palestine, it's been virtually daily and every Friday a huge spike in the number of people killed. Children especially, women, journalists, paramedics. There was a 4-year-old baby died yesterday from wounds sustained either the previous Friday or the Friday before that. An Israeli grandee has just called for the murder, the decapitation, literally, of the president of the Palestine Authority, Abu Mazen. The Palestinians have been utterly forgotten, and yet they continue to die in industrial numbers. Of course, you're right that Protective Edge and Cast Lead before it, a few years before it, were more dramatic in that there were a huge number of people being killed at the same time. But for the Palestinians, it's been a very grim year. Not just the injury that they've suffered, but the insult added to the injury of nobody actually giving a toss about it.
I take your point on the Israel-Palestine-Gaza situation, I think, as you say, the indifference and the issue has almost been forgotten. I mean, there was a sort of flurry of interest at the start of the Great Return March from the media and the sort of left commentariat, but that interest sort of peaked and then died off. But I think for me, though, it's not, because notwithstanding Israel, Gaza, but the Middle East as a whole, I mean, for me, sort of 2016 was a particularly bad year for the reason that we had a chance to stop what was going on in Yemen at that point, because it had only been going on for a year. And what makes this year so sickening for me is that the Western press have now suddenly all jumped on board with Yemen.
They've discovered Yemen.
They can't fucking get enough of it when it's too fucking late. The situation in Yemen has now, in my opinion, gone past the point of no return. It is too late for anything to be done now, that we're literally going to be mopping up the blood and the dead bodies, and little else is possible now.
Well, it's ironic, isn't it, that Britain, including the husband of Britain's Prime Minister, who profits mightily from arms sales, has been earning money for private companies through military transfers of technology and expertise. And the British public will be asked to charitably give to mop up the blood you're talking about, shed by British weapons. And nobody in the media ever joins these two dots together and says, hey, wait a minute. But of course, we now know more about the media than we did last time we spoke.
We did, yes.
This integrity initiative, which is funded by the British government to undermine other countries, and not just countries that we would regard, or our state regards, as enemies like Russia, but Spain, for example. The Integrity Initiative boasted that it had stopped the appointment as Minister of Defense in Spain of the former intelligence chief in Spain, who they regard as insufficiently warlike towards Russia.
Such a good way of putting it.
They boasted about it. So British government money spent to undermine the political and democratic system in Spain, one of our allies, one of the countries we're depending on to cut us some slack over the Brexit negotiations. And of course, the coup de grace, I think, for this integrity initiative, at least I hope so, is the revelation that they've also been working in Britain to undermine the Labour opposition in Parliament. And the leader of the opposition. This is the first time this has ever happened, you know. At least overtly. Covertly, I've no doubt there have been dozens of such, hundreds maybe, of such anti-Labour operations from the deep state, but they've never been captured before.
No, I think, it's been a fascinating year watching the sort of the undoing of the mainstream press in this country. I mean, we've gone from sort of the sublime, the preposterous reporting around the Skripal affair and the more holes than Swiss cheese that came out of that, to the Guardian fabricating a story about Julian Assange and a journalist visiting him.
Still not retracted.
And they still haven't retracted it. They're still standing by this nonsense. Still not retracted,
still not defended.
Exactly.
Just left there.
And
the hope that we'll forget about it.
Which we won't. And then, as you quite rightly point out, to the Integrity Initiative, which has exposed the likes of Bellincrap and BuzzFeed.
All kinds. Codswallop, BuzzFeed, Dean Nelson of the Sunday Times, who I knew when he was a Trotskyite member of the militant tendency. Although he now says he actually only infiltrated them in order to write about them. Although he wasn't a journalist at the time.
Of course.
Which makes him either a professional deceiver or a Trotskyite. Take your pick.
One of the two.
Cohen, Nick Cohen of the Observer.
These
they're all now being
shits.
exposed one after another as at the trough of British government funding, spook funding, a deep state intelligence operation.
Exactly.
And they're there supping hungrily whilst opining on a Sunday or whenever they're writing as decent, honest journalists, really giving us what they feel, what they think. It is, I mean, you'd have to have a heart of stone not to laugh, really.
No, I know. It is staggering.
Mind you, you'll be glad to hear this, Steve. I can bring you this news if you haven't heard it yet. You know they were ensconced in that derelict mill near Auchtermuchty.
Yes.
And one felt for them because it's cold up there at this time of year, and the windows were broken and things on this mill. I mean, it was really derelict. Well, they've moved.
How about they?
They've moved to the most prestigious basement in London, in Temple, near the Temple Underground Station, a multi-million pound beautiful building, and they are now the tenants. But in their accounts, they're not paying rent or rates to anybody. So who might the Landlord B.
Go on.
MI5.
No, it's not.
It's an MI5 building that they're living in rent-free grace and favour. And we know this because a journalist, now this is the Integrity Initiative, looking for truth and integrity in journalism. A journalist dropped in on them and was physically manhandled out the door.
Was this, I'm not sure if I've read the story, but it's flicked up on the timeline. Was this through the Greystone Project? Was it that?
No, it was a fellow from Sputnik, actually.
Oh, okay.
From Sputnik Radio, who was tipped off by the Honourable Craig Murray, His Excellency, the former British ambassador in Uzbekistan, former Foreign Office grandee. See, their problem is he knows them all. And it's a bit like I was saying about Corbyn earlier, knowing Parliament. Craig Murray knows the spooks.
Yeah.
He used to be in the same building as them.
Yeah.
And thank God he's still alive and healthy and giving us
it's amazing,
ESP
really.
On it. Yeah. Don't go for any walks in the woods.
No.
Craig.
And segueing into that, of course, so the mainstream media has been falling apart around our eyes this year, and yet lashing out at the likes of you and me and our mutual friend Afshin on RT, accusing him of being...
He's in the Mueller report. He's the
Mueller
focus of the Mueller
yes,
report.
I told you to hide that red phone. And in the midst of all that, of course, you have the likes of you and me who keep going, don't we?
Yes.
And your crowdfunder for your film about the killing of Dr. David Kelly has made its target, hasn't it?
Yes, on Sunday we broke through. The executive producer, as I can now call him, Mr. Scott Fletcher, MBE, the Northwest of England Entrepreneur of the Year, made a very handsome £3,000 donation on Sunday evening, which took us through the target. Now, we need to keep fundraising because there's still 7 days to go, and get this, if anyone were to pool their money out at this stage, in sufficient amounts that it took us below the 50, the whole project is wrecked.
Yeah.
Because if we don't get 50, we don't get anything.
So you need a
at
backstop.
all. So we need a backstop. We need a backstop to make sure that that cannot happen. So please keep giving. By the way,
it's
really important.
I'm very excited about this. I can't wait for it to go off the ground, actually.
Kickstarter have awarded us a special status. It's a heart, and it says Projects We Love. So Kickstarter are now getting behind the...
Kickstarter are now communists, by the looks of it.
That'll be
the next Carol Codswallop story. Infiltrated by Maoists.
Are there any Russians in Kickstarter? Even though it's an American company, perhaps especially because it's an American... No, there's rising interest in the film. Excitement even. Because most people have felt right from the start that there was something not right about this narrative. That this man would be the last kind of a man who'd go into the woods and try and hack his life away with a penknife that was blunt and not leave any fingerprints on it.
Yeah, and it's like I said to you when you first started this, I think it's an extremely important piece of work, not least because, as you say, I think it's of our generation, it's... Do you want me to just start that bit again?
And as we're stopping anyway, did you discuss script? Oh, I'm so sorry because I was walking around. Did you discuss
well, we just sort of touched on it, so not really. But
how long have we got?
Yeah, it's time to wrap up, so just make highlights, quickly go through it.
No.
Sorry.
That's all right. Can I carry on? As I said previously on the show, I mean, for me, it's a vital project that you're doing, not least because I think it's of our kind of generation of this political past 30 years. It's one of the most despicable stories, but one of the most important ones as well, because it's another piece of this jigsaw of the Blair, Clinton triangulation era, which is responsible for so much of the chaos we now see around us. And as you say, it's picking that onion apart. So I'm very pleased you've reached your target.
I'm calling it the Killings triptych or trilogy because we did the killings of Tony Blair. We're now doing Killing Kelly, and the next one is on Robin Cook, who killed Cock Robin. And
another walk in the Highlands, that one
yes,
also, wasn't it?
Yes. So I'll not be going for any walks in the woods or in the Highlands. Be sure of that. So if I'm found in either place, you can be sure someone took me there.
There are no hiking boots in his home, I can
exactly,
tell you.
none. It's important, the story, for a number of reasons. For the one you mentioned, that it emerges from the same swamp as the Iraq War. The dark actors are the same dark actors. But it's also, I think, got another angle to it, which is connected intimately to the discussion we've just had about the Integrity Initiative. Every country needs a security service to keep us safe. It needs to be intelligent. It needs to be well-resourced. And it needs to be democratically accountable. And Britain lacks, at the very least, the third of those, and arguably all three.
Yeah.
And so we'll be campaigning in this film for the reopening of the David Kelly inquiry, the unsealing of the 70-year sealed files, a new Kelly inquiry, preferably as part of a second Chilcot inquiry. Tony Blair likes second votes. Him and Alistair Campbell are campaigning hard for a second referendum. Let's have a second Chilcot inquiry under Prime Minister Jeremy Corbyn. Why don't we?
There's something.
Will it happen? Jeremy Corbyn 2019?
I don't want to say that.
Okay.
Or what, will he be the Prime Minister? Yeah, okay. I thought you were telling us to stop.
Yeah, but you need to wrap it up.
All right.
So
All right.
That was the
Okay.
2018
Yeah.
highlights.
Well, that's, yeah.
And remember the choosing of the
Yeah. Well, that's all we've got time for. You can review now all 25 of the editions of Topple Galloway. Mrs. Galloway would like you to vote on your favourite outfits that we wore in the 25 episodes. I know which one I'm going for in the case of Steve's, definitely last week's.
I don't remember what I wore yesterday, let alone last week, but I'm sure it was delightful.
Predictions, finally, Steve.
Yes.
What's your principal prediction or predictions for 2019?
My prediction is that there will be a general election, because I believe that Theresa May's Brexit deal will end up falling apart. I don't think she will satisfy the DUP or her objectors in her own party, so I think there will be a general election. I'm still not, I don't think Labour will get in. I don't think it's going to happen. I cannot see. I think we are in an age where there is too much cognitive dissonance in this country, and I think that showed. If he was going to get in, it would have been 2017, because he was riding on a wave of support from groups like Momentum and people from within his own party, and I think that wave has now hit its trough, as it were, and I sadly don't think he'll get in. But that is my prediction, and I hope I'm proved wrong, because for all my anarchist sensibilities, and however much I don't always support Labour, of course I'm not delusional to the fact that it would be far better to have a Labour government and it would save lives. I can't see it happening.
I think there'll be a general election on the 31st of January. I think Jeremy Corbyn will be returned as Prime Minister of Britain, as the head of a minority government, a bit like Harold Wilson in the winter of 1974, when he came back to power as the head of a minority administration and went back to the country in October. And I think history will repeat itself.
Okay.
Prime Minister Jeremy Corbyn in February, going back to the people for a proper majority in October. These are the predictions of Topple Galloway. We hope you've enjoyed watching us. By the way, Steve, I see that the Canary are appealing for funds.
Yes.
Is there a crisis? What is it?
Canary crisis. No canary crisis. We're quite, as we were saying off camera, our model as such is self-sufficient. As we always proclaim, we don't have any shareholders, we haven't got any debt, we don't have
That's
any...
a key point, not having any debt.
Yeah. We owe nobody nothing, apart from the people we write for, of course. So we've got our business model is like safe, because literally it's what people...
Yeah, you can't go bust because you don't have any debts. You might run out of cash to pay the writers.
Even that won't happen, because naturally the way our model works, we do generate advertising revenue, as they're totally open about, and that's dependent on how many articles we put out. More articles we write, the more advertising revenue we get. And we have a core membership base of several thousand people who donate every month as well. So, but what we're looking for, because they funded me for my podcast, which I'm doing every week, but they want to expand more on the media side of things, and we also want to do more
video, maybe.
More video. Yeah, they're looking to do more filmed stuff, and also we want to do more investigative work, because it's something that we haven't done much of up until this point, but yet there's several of us there who are actually investigative journalists from other outlets. We've all done that in the past, me included. So we want funding to dig deeper into what's going on in this country, to give our voice on other platforms, and to expand the Canaries operation, essentially, because at the minute we have the mainstream press, as we've just discussed, are falling apart around our ears, and yet they're still as dogmatic and arrogant as ever.
This is your era. This is your journalistic era. So how much do people pay per month?
It varies. It's whatever people want to donate. They can donate the price of a cup of coffee, which, depending on where you live in London, is either about £2.50 or £10, or up to anything. Several people donate several thousand.
Well, put me down for £10 a month.
Thank you.
And that's the first. I hope the other viewers will do the same.
Yeah.
£10 a month to the Canary, because you need a canary in the mine, because if you don't, it might be you that keels over. It's been marvellous.
Yes, it has been. I wasn't expecting that. It has been marvellous. It's been a marvellous 2018. It's been, and I have to say, just on the record, it's been a real privilege to work with you.
No, the pleasure.
Honestly, my late father would be dancing in his grave knowing that I get to sit with George Galloway every week, because he was a massive fan of yours. And also, I got to meet Ken Livingstone as well through this process, and my dad would be equally as happy with that.
And you're appearing with me in Ken's stead at Neath, in the Gwyn Hall on the 26th of January.
Live show, yes.
Live show, yeah. And if it goes well, there'll be more of those. Thanks very much for being with us. I'm George Galloway.
I'm Steve Topple.
Wishing you the compliments of the season.